Shalom, everybody. Welcome back to Insights in the Parsha of the Week, Parshat Tetzaveh, which this year is also Shabbat Zachor before Purim. So it's a heavy Shabbat, obviously. We'll do our best to see what we can gain guidance and light from the Parsha of the week. The Parsha goes into the various garments of the Kohen Gadol, Aharon. One that we'd like to focus on now is the Tzitz, the plate, the golden plate that was on Aaron's forehead running from ear to ear, and then attached in the back with threads of tchelet, crimson wool, crimson wool dyed threads, and also going on from the top here of the actual plate, going also above, in a way that it went like a V, like the thread would go into a hole, it come out, so it'd be two, and then there'd be room for the Aaron's tefillin, and then the hat they wore that was above the tefillin over the head, and this thread had to go over everything, and all three, 1, 2, and 3, were connected in the back, so it would do an entire circle around the head and over, covering his skull, the whole brain area of Aharon HaKohen. So let's take a look at the actual verse. This is chapter 28, verse 36, where it says, V'asita tzitz zahav tahor. And you should make this word tzitz, which there's no translation. Rashi explains, we'll see what Rashi explains. You should make this tzitz out of pure gold, ufitachta alav, and you should have engraved in it, pituchei chotam, an engraving format, avach like a chatima, like an insignia, Kodesh LaHashem, holy to God, to Hashem. Look at Rashi. Tzitz, kemin tas shel zahav, a type of golden plate, shaya rochav shtei etzbaot, that was two fingers wide, from the size of two fingers. This is the finger, so two of these. That's all it was, just two of them on the forehead. Rochav shtei etzbaot makif ala metzach me'ozen le'ozen, and it would go around the forehead from ear to ear. Okay, fine. What's the idea, if we can try to examine what's going on here? The tzitz had Kodesh LaHashem, and Rashi explains also coming up that they weren't written on the same line. It had to be written in two separate lines, because you have to give honor to Hashem's name. So the word Kodesh La was on the bottom line because it's two finger breaths, like two lines. Kodesh La and then Hashem, Yud Ke Vav Ke. Fine. What's this idea here? What can we gain from the idea of the Tzitz? So in Likutey Moharan Lesson 24, Rebbe Nachman shows the process from joy all the way to perception in life. Clarity, light, openings, salvation, all through doing mitzvot b'simcha. He basically says that if you want to advance in life, if you want to get out of what you're stuck in, you have to really invest in simcha, in doing mitzvot b'simcha and joy, which one of them is music, dancing and music and movement. That creates a type of a happiness, okay? And when happiness is activated and a person uses that happiness in serving Hashem, this goes up, 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 up until reaching what's called in the Kabbalah the level of the Keter. The Keter is a level that is the interface between creation and God. Hashem's infinite light, separated by this wall called the Keter, and us below. Our goal is to somehow connect to this infinite light while still being in a human existence, because it's two opposites. If we were if we would just reconnect as we are, we would melt, we would disintegrate. We couldn't meet and connect to the infinite light without changing our existence, because we're finite and this light is infinite. So these two merging would cause the finite existence of mankind, of the man, to disappear. So we have to find a way how to somehow draw light from the infinite light and shine it into our finite existence, and this light then helps us with openings in life, clarity, advancement, salvation, Bezrat Hashem. Like the verse reads, Ki besimcha tetzeu, for with joy you will leave. Fine. So he teaches, Rebbe Nachman, that when a person is so enhanced by the joy of the mitzvah, that his mind is like, and the expression is like flying with light and clarity and joy and momentum and trying to come close to Hashem. If he continues, like we said, he'll go into the infinite light domain and melt. So he collides into the keter. The keter is like a wall, bouncing that person back. And the bounce back enables a person to create what's called chambers. Nine chambers. That these chambers are like vessels that a person, even though he's a finite existence, can perceive within them the infinite light. This begins to shine into a person by him accepting the bounce back. The main way, Rebbe Nachman explains, to accept this bounce is by having emunah. When you believe that the setback is really a stepping stone of advancement, when you believe that colliding and being bounced back is really beneficial for you and will bring you closer to Hashem, this is what allows for the creation of these 9 chambers, okay? So, in the garments of the Aharon HaKohen represents in his entirety of the 8 vestments that he was wearing on a daily basis, the Kohen Gadol, the high priests, the descendants of Aaron, including Aaron himself, the 8 vestments that they would wear on a daily level, except for Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur was the one day when he would, when entering the Holy of Holies, he would wear just 4 of the 8 garments. But on regular terms, it was 8 garments. They express the stages of connecting to the infinite light. The bottom of the jacket, one of the jackets that he wore, the vestments that Aharon HaKohen wore, had little bells and little pom-poms shaped like pomegranates on the bottom, and they would make noise. And those were located at the very bottom next to his feet. The idea of the cloak, the Meir, having these pom-poms and the little bells is the idea of music, nigun. That when Aaron would be walking in his service of Hashem in the holy temple, the noise would also generate joy. When there's sound and momentum and movement, that's the idea of simcha. When a person is sad and depressed, he's lethargic and quiet and down and not talking, and there's no noise. But sound is as an indication of simcha and joy. So when the Kohen Gadol will be moving, there's all these bells ringing and everything to show the idea of music. Okay, so that's the beginning point. And at the top is the keter. In between, though, is Aharon himself. Aharon, Rebbe Nachman teaches, Aharon, and by extension the Kohanim, represent the idea of blessing. That's why the Kohanim do what's called Birkat Kohanim, the blessings of the Kohanim. In fact, every Jew in the morning, when we say the blessings of the Torah, the first Torah portion we read right after the blessings of the Torah are the blessings of the Kohanim, to show that these verses and the Kohanim who are designated to give these blessings is the key for all the blessing for the entire day, the entire week, the entire month, the entire year, and all of life. All the blessings you need in life are in these 3 verses of Yivarech Hashem B'Yishmerecha, Yer Hashem Panav Alecha V'Choneka, Yisa Hashem Panav Alecha, V'Esem Lecha Shalom. So he teaches in lesson 24 that when a person is happy and does mitzvot b'simcha, and it's so amazing because Aharon, the high priest, moving around in the temple with the pom-poms and the bells, the jingle bells, making that noise, that's like walking to do mitzvot. Every step he was doing in the temple was for a mitzvah. So it's sound generated while doing the mitzvot with joy. The goal of that the next stage after that is the idea of the hands, the blessings. Aharon himself represents the blessings. Rebbe Nachman teaches that when the concept of the hands, which are the blessings, which is the concept of Aharon, the Kohanim, who give the blessings, is activated, that is now the gateway to the next stage, which is now to draw the blessing of intellect, but joining it with emunah. We're not going to go so much into these ideas. This activates what's called the keter. And like we said, the keter how it works that it bounces back a person, but in doing so, when a person receives it with emunah, he's able to create these 9 chambers that contain within the infinite light, which then shines into the person this clarity that he needs so badly, which is the end product of the jingling of the pom-poms in the bottom of the feet of doing the mitzvot b'simcha. So when the keter shines light, that light would afterwards reflect clarity and answers in the breastplate, the Urim V'Tumim. The Urim V'Tumim are called Urim V'Tumim, which was the breastplate Aharon had on his chest with the 12 stones, each one have engraved the 12 tribes. So all of them together have one of the 12 tribes on each one, and then all the alphabet on them. And when asked a question by the king or the leading prophet, the leading leader, if it was Yeshua or later king, so the Urim V'Tumim would shine answers. And these answers shining are coming from the infinite light, okay? That's the idea of shining clarity to a person, okay? That's the idea of the breastplate. But it emanates from the idea of the crown. Now the crown, the keter, like we said, is located on the head. So Aharon also has to indicate in the garments he's wearing the concept of the keter, to show that doing mitzvot b'simcha reaches up all the way to the keter, and then the answer comes down to the chest area of the breastplate, shining the clarity of what to do. So Aharon was wearing the tzitz, okay? The word tzitz also means like to take a peek, like in Song of Songs, metzitz min hacharakim. He was taking a little peek from between the cracks. Meaning what? I don't get a clear view, but I have a little view from a crack. That's how it is when Hashem shines into a person a glimpse of the infinite light. It's only a glimpse, and that's the idea of the tzitz. The tzitz was located on the forehead of Aharon HaKohen, the forehead containing behind it the skull and the brain being the entity, the part of the person that collides into the keter. We explained earlier in classes that when a person does mitzvot b'simcha, like we said, he reaches the level of the hands activate the blessings, the main blessings being the blessing of the intellect. So the intellect is on a roll now, going up and up and up to try to perceive more clarity, and it's the intellect of a person that collides into the keter. And this bash of the 3 sections of the mind, which are called chokhmah, bina, dat, 3 areas that a person needs in thinking, which is knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. These 3, when collided into the keter, become intermingled, causing a product of 3 times 3, multiplied. 3 times 3 equals 9. That's the 9 chambers, okay? So now, back to Aaron, the high priest. He had this tzitz, which was protruding beyond what's in the head, which is the skull and the brain. The idea of the skull being the keter, and the brain trying to perceive the idea of the crown, the skull, the keter. And the bouncing back is what produces the clarity that then eventually shines into the Urim V'Tumim. So Aaron had this golden plate that said Kodesh LaHashem. Kodesh, Rebbe Nachman teaches and the Zohar teaches, is the idea of the mentalities. And in this case, there's 2 opinions in the Gemara. The Kodesh LaHashem, holy for the sake of God. Is it referring to Aharon himself, the high priest? Or is it referring to the Jewish people? And the answer is it's referring to both. It's amazing, Aharon had to be at such a high level of humility. He's walking around with a plate on his forehead that says like he's holy. Kodesh LaHashem, sanctified for the sake of God. Can you imagine a person wearing that on his forehead? I'm sanctified to God. What a level of humility it takes to be able to do that and not to have haughtiness, chas v'shalom. Unbelievable. But that shows you the greatness of Aharon. That Aharon, being the high priest, and expected from all of his descendants who became high priests, were to be expected to be holding at such a level that they can wear this plate on their forehead, holy to God, and not to feel like any haughtiness. But this is the will of Hashem to do that. The idea of Kodesh LaHashem is through sanctifying the mind, the idea of the mind, that a person taps into Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei. Yud Kei Vav Kei correspond to all the possible levels that a Jew can connect to in this world. There's 5 levels. There are 5 levels. There are 4 worlds. in the Kabbalah, 4 dimensions we call them, and that translates on a practical level that a person in his development of his Judaism, of his perspective of God, will go into 4 dimensions, which correspond to these 4 worlds, called from above to below, Atzilut, Biriya, Yetzira, Asiya, the world of nearness, that's the highest one, okay, Biriya, the world of creation, the world of Yetzira, formation, and the world of Asiya, action. And above Atzilut, there's a 5th level, which is really the interface connecting to the infinite light. It's called the domain of the tzachtzachot, the domain of the splendors, which shine in the infinite light into these 4 levels of dimensions of existence of creation. So on the plate, it was Kodesh La. We follow Rashi. There's many opinions how it was written. Let's follow Rashi, where Kodesh La, it's 2 words, Kodesh LaHashem, holy for the sake of God. But in order to give honor to Hashem's 4-lettered name, they would break up the word LaHashem and just write Kodesh La, holy for, and then the next word Yud Kei Vav Kei will be on the second line, the higher line above, because we said there's room on the forehead for 2 finger breadths, which is the idea of 2 lines. So Kodesh Le would be on the bottom line, and then LaHashem would be on the Kodesh La on the bottom, and Yud Kei Vav Kei would be on the top line, showing that he tapped into Yud Kei Vav Kei through the process of doing mitzvot b'simcha, and it's showing the whole process where a Jew can get to. So the second opinion is because you had on the shoulders of Aharon HaKohen, the high priest, 2 stones, okay, each one having 6 of 12 tribes, 6 here and 6 here. So these 12 tribes afterwards, on them is what's written Kodesh LaHashem. These 12 tribes here that are on the shoulders of Aaron, they are the ones who are Kodesh LaHashem. In that sense, it's the idea of the Jewish people also reaching this level. Because Aharon HaKohen, besides being a high priest and being holy in himself, he's also representing the Jewish people. His job in the Holy Temple is he's like a representative for all of us. Him going in Yom Kippur in the Holy of Holies is for all of us. And the daily offerings and the work that the high priest did in the temple is for all of us. Him being the leader of the Kohanim and all the priestly blessings, he's representing us, the activation of blessing into the world. So it's fitting also that Kodesh is going for the Jewish people as a whole. What this shows is that it's 2 levels. It's the work of tzaddikim, what they do, how they reach these high levels of tapping into Yud Kei Vav Kei by doing mitzvot b'simcha, and thus activating all 5 levels, the 4 dimensions plus the 5th one, which is hinted to in the bottom of the letter Yud. You have Yud Kei Vav Kei. Those 4 letters are the 4 dimensions we mentioned. Atzilut is the first Yud, Hey, Bria, Vav, Yetzira, and the last Hey is Asiya. But on the first Yud, when writing Yud Kei Vav Kei in a Sefer Torah, the scribe has to make a type of extension leg on the roof. It's very tiny. On the roof of the letter Yud, he has to extend. There's the kotz, there's the spitz going upwards, and there's a little spitz going down. It's called kotza de ot Yud, and that is referring to the 5th level of the tzachtzachot, the highest one. So Kodesh LaHashem is showing by doing mitzvot with joy, whatever dimension a person's holding in the 4 dimensions, whatever he's holding, that he can also reach the 5th one. All this by doing mitzvot with joy. Whether it's the tzaddikim at the caliber of Aaron, or whether it's every Jew. But it starts with the pom-poms and the jingle bells. It starts with doing mitzvot b'simcha. Running and doing good and being happy about it. It's not easy, but that's the goal. When you know that's the goal, then you work to aspire for that. And when it does happen, it leads to the blessings, the idea of Aharon, the keter, the bounce back, the vessels, shining light, the idea of the Urim V'Tumim. Rebbe Nachman explains something beautifully. Rebbe Nachman says that the idea of the breastplate is the idea of printed books, printing the books of tzaddikim. That when a person, even after a book has been written by a tzaddik, maybe even 100 years later, 200 years later, the letters shine. Meaning what? A person begins to feel that the tzaddikim are talking directly to them through their teachings. Even though the books were printed and published 100 years ago, 200 years ago, still they shine like the breastplate. They shine letters to a person, shining him indications of what to do in life. In other words, the Torah is used representing in the 12 tribes, the 12 stones on the breastplate. That's the Torah, is used to shine messages to a person on a personal level from the infinite light, from the Tzitz. The idea of the Tzitz, which is taking a glimpse, shining what's represented by the forehead, the skull, the brain, shining a crack of the infinite light, Kodesh LaHashem, Kodesh meaning the intellect now, tapping into Yud Kei Vav Kei, and then the result is shining messages down to a person on the breastplate, the idea of the Torah. Learning the Torah works, especially of the true tzaddikim, where you begin to pick up messages. Hashem is trying to tell you something, and you can pick it up through the message of the Torah. May we be zoche to use the parsha, the message of the parsha, to combat Haman, Amalek, Achashverosh. It says in the Megillah that Achashverosh donned the 8 garments of the Kohen Gadol at the festivity that he made for the Jews in Shushan. It says there in the depiction of the decorations, chur. The word chur is written there, chur kapas utchelet, in depicting the beautiful colors of the drapes and the floor and the columns and pillars used for the festivity that Achashverosh made. So the chet is big, and the author of Manot HaLevi, he writes that the chet being big shows that is an indication that Achashverosh donned the 8 garments of the Kohen Gadol, and his intent was to take the simcha of the mitzvah that the Jews activate, thus activating the infinite light and clarity. He wanted to take that energy and bring it into impurity, because in this Suda, the food wasn't kosher, the wine wasn't kosher, and also he gave also prostitutes for the Jewish people, God forbid, to fall into. So there was a lot of bad negativity at that Seudah at Achashverosh. And his intent was dafka to take the holiness of the simcha of the mitzvot and what it does, what it activates, accessing the infinite light, and to bring it into impurity. That's why it was such a scary event, a sad event, and that was one of the stepping stones that led to the decree to destroy all the Jews. Were not for Mordechai the tzaddik, who woke up the Jewish people, who maintained hope, who gave hope for the Jewish people just to keep on davening and not to give up and to be positive. And he himself was able to balance 2 extremes. Mordechai, on one hand, was able to cry to Hashem for help, and at the same time, he showed no fear towards Haman. It says in the Midrash that whenever Haman passed by, instead of bowing down to Haman, like Haman ordered, because he put an idol on his chest, an idol on his back, and he ordered that people should bow down to his idol. So not only did Mordechai not bow down, but he stuck out his foot to Haman, because on the bottom of Mordechai's shoe, he had inscribed a pact that Haman signed, that he sold himself as a slave for life, because once he was in danger of dying of starvation, and Mordechai had bread, and Mordechai offered him bread on condition that Haman sell himself as a slave for life, which he did. And Mordechai kept the shtar because they had nothing to write on, so he wrote it on the bottom of his shoe because it was etched well and it could stay good forever, for a long time. So whenever Mordechai saw Haman, he just stuck out his shoe and he was able to mock him. He wasn't afraid. He said, I'm a Jew, I'm not allowed to bow down. And only that, he stuck out to remind him, you're my slave, don't forget about that. So Mordechai was able to balance being happy, not afraid, and at the same time davening to Hashem. That's an amazing balance. And it was in his merit that the Jewish people also were able to come to that, to have the miracle of Purim happen to them. We should be zoche to have the tzitz in our life, the beautiful light of the tzitz, shining us a crack, a glimpse of the infinite light, Kodesh LaHashem, holy, the mind, the intellect, reaching to Yud Kei Vav Kei, and shining us this clarity. Shabbat Shalom Ubrach.